Hello, everybody. We're going to wait for everybody to join, but I wanted to welcome you to our webinar. We'll just give everybody a few minutes to sign on, and we'll just opening it up. Give it a minute. Let's see if we've got people coming on. Let me double check here. Make sure we did everything right, James. Yeah, we got 34 attendees already. Fantastic. You are all jumping on the webinar that is titled, "Is the MLS Still the Source of Truth for, all things data?" So, hold on. I can't minimize my Zoom. Just moving it over here a little bit. For all things residential real estate data. So thank you for joining. I appreciate it. We're going to wait to get formally started, as I said, and give everybody, we had quite a large number of registrations. But in the interim, we will chat amongst ourselves in an entertaining fashion, because if you follow my master classes, you do know that I do like to put my panelists on the spot and insist that we all be human for a moment and talk about like our favorite books or movies. Or what we won't talk about is the weather. We just won't, because that's really boring. So Dan, you thought you weren't going to be first, but I know you want to do it. What is a favorite book, movie, or TV show? And if you have none of the above, you can certainly give us the name of your favorite pet.
Oh, well, my favorite pet is my dog Ginger, but I will tell you, I read a book recently that is...
That's my nickname. Don't anybody, any of the 50 people attending this call me that.
No one
Please.
Gets to know that. Yeah. But so I recently read a book called Piranesi by Susanna Clark. She's the author of a couple things in the sort of magical realism kind of space. But this book, Piranesi, if I say anything about it, it gives away everything. So
okay, no spoilers. No spoilers.
It's beautiful, mysterious. You spend half the book figuring out what's happening, and then it's amazing. Go read it, Piranesi.
Okay, all right. I'm not going to ask you to spell it either. You want to do it? Do it. Spell it.
Piranesi, Piranesi.
All right, not as bad as it sounded. All right, cool, good. And Marilyn, you?
I don't know if I'll say favorite TV shows, but ones I'm watching right now. And those of you that know me won't be surprised. One is called Billions.
Ah, sure.
Other Ballers.
Nice.
The B word. The B word.
This is a little bit telling. No wonder you didn't want to talk about it. I get it. Maybe perhaps we can go to the other B and go to the blink list thing that we were talking about.
Yeah, and actually Blinkist that's a fun thing. My favorite book is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. That's an oldie book. Love that book. But there's a great app called Blinkist, like blink your eyes, IST, and that's a great thing if you're trying to get your 10,000 steps in a day like I do. And it's got a whole bunch of different types of nonfiction books that they summarize in, a 300-page book in 10 minutes or less. So you get the great takeaways from that. So it's all kinds of business, leadership, et cetera, all kinds of great books. So that's
nice. I like that. I'm going to be downloading that later, but I might be sitting on my couch and not walking around. Okay. Probably should be. Tom, what about you?
So favorite movie, I go back to Cinema Paradiso. It's a little bit sappy, I know, but it's very sweet. It's very always gets me. I listened to a book recently, which was Born a Crime. So I think it's a couple of years old, by Trevor Noah. But what was awesome was Trevor narrated the book, and I think he's hilarious. And it was just great to learn about what it would be like to grow up in South Africa as a mixed race individual. It was funny, it was educational, it was entertaining. It's great.
I'm digging it. I like that. I also like any kind of sensory overload that will stop me from thinking about work. So I play Words with Friends. If anybody wants to challenge me, I'm half decent. I do love Audible. I recommend, I think it's Lisa Jewell, The Family Upstairs is a good Audible. The sequel was not so good, so don't bother. That's kind of just fun and light if you like the mystery genre. For TV, I'm a bit of a PBS nut and just finished The Great Train Robbery. And that's about it. Pretend to try and read, bought the Kindle, it sits there. um, try again. So thank you all for giving us an insight into your baller lifestyles. Never living that one down, Marilyn, never. And on that note, I will introduce Marilyn first. She may never, you should get to know her because she may never come on a panel again after this.
That's right. This could be the last time. So
This is it. So let's all enjoy it. Marilyn Wilson, good friend and general manager of Greater Southern MLS, and obviously co-founder of Wave Group, RE Tech, etc. One of the great minds of the industry. Tom Desario, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Director of Product Management of MLSlistings, and Dan Ray, Director of Product Development of CRMLS. So thank you all very much for joining us. I think we probably should get started. So let's talk a little bit about just what this session is about. It really is, we're going to break it into two pieces about sort of, is the MLS still the source of truth for all residential real estate data? We're going to break it up into consumer focused versus subscriber focused. So we're going to kind of piece it out. And I think we'll start with consumer focused, if that's okay with you guys. We were joking for everybody a little bit. And then, by the way, the third part is I will have some questions for the audience. So I would like to ask some questions to the audience. One of the things we were joking about before we started the webinar, just amongst ourselves, was about sort of the history of the MLS. And depending on sort of your age of our attendee here, you may or may not remember the sound, which is the MLS printing across a dot matrix printer. And it, unfortunately, I am old enough to remember that the MLS truly was the source of truth because it was a book that was printed once a day, a couple of copies. You heard that printer going all day. And that's how agents looked for listings and created it. Do you guys remember that? Do you have any other sort of thing you want to share with regard to the history of the MLS? And then we'll talk about where we are today by comparison. No, that one came out short. I clearly summed it up pretty good there.
How bad?
Probably some people that remember this presentation, for those that have gone to CMLS many times, but it was I want to say it was in Minneapolis because I remember John Mosey being on stage, and they brought up these contraptions. That's all the only word I could describe. One of them literally looked like a bunch of ice picks, and it was like in the days when coding was done with cards. And I think it was even before the cards. This thing was, I don't even know how old it was. And they would show how you would literally ice pick, and I don't know what each of those must have meant.
Binding, I think they would bind them, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's get on to hotter stuff. And I have been told that was an excellent imitation of Chewbacca, perhaps not a dot matrix printer. So I will move on. And I will do my best to do a Chewbacca if we have time at the end. So look, you can't have public data without the MLS, right? So let's talk about the consumer. What we're really talking about is the portals here, right? And one of the things we seem to forget is that without the MLS, there is no Zillow, there is no Realtor.com, there is no Homes.com, correct? So I don't know, Marilyn, if you want to kind of talk about that a little bit, but generically, like, I feel like this is a point that people forget, that let's talk about what it was like to go back to the days of manual entry. And I know Tom has a good story for us on that front. So we'll go from you to Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very passionate about this, that the MLS does truly create the concept of organized real estate. Without us, without MLSs, it's a mess. And go to other countries and you'll see what it looks like. You can go to some countries and you'll see the same property for sale from 5 different agencies at 5 different prices. I mean, it's just a mess, right? And the fact that we have so much cooperation, so much collaboration among just about every practitioner, some states are a little less than others, and that most importantly, that we contribute all of that in a way that is clean, that's accurate, that's legal, that follows fair housing, follows all of those things, and then provides access to consumers of all types, literally all over the world. I mean, to me, it's really what gets us all up in the morning, is to create that level of transparency that matters so much for doing business, but also for people that want to live the dream of home ownership.
I think that's right. And I do think, like, I will chime in here too, having sort of run along with Les, running List Hub for a number of years, which is that we often competed with systems that were manual data entry. 25 bucks, put your listing up on the major sites. The problem is that even if you put it up the first time, if you want to change anything, forget it. And it's outdated almost immediately. And of course, with the speed with which data moves and we make changes, and the industry is so much faster than it was. So, Tom, I know you have a good story on this that's happening with MLS listings that I think everybody would like to hear.
Well, can you give me a little hint on it? Because I'm
there's
coming up.
the story about the rental
Oh,
listings.
oh, right. Yeah. So, one of the things that we heard from our subscribers recently was that they had rental listings and they weren't showing up on some of the large portals. And one of the things that MLS Listings maintains is a consumer-facing portal, MLSlistings.com. And so we use that portal to make sure that our data is flowing correctly. And sure enough, all of the rental listings were there. But it turned out that some of the large portals have decided not to display the rental listings that are part of our feed. They have their own rental listings. They have their own capability for property owners to enter rental listings on their system. So it's not a part of our system. And so from a consumer perspective, if you want to see rental properties that are represented by realtors, you have to come to MLSlistings.com. And there are other sites where you can see listings that are not represented by realtors. And I don't know anything more about it than that.
Well, but I think it's a valuable story. And when you brought it up the other day, I
Yeah.
think it was important. And I'll tell you why. Number one, I'm pretty sure, and I love me some Zillow, but I'm pretty sure they're charging for putting up those rental listings, so people can either afford it or they can't. Second of all, I do know this because I have some background with rental listings, that most of the listings that they're putting up there are from like a Bozzuto or something like that. And so therefore what's happening is that the listings, the majority of the showing, are where they're getting paid from the large property management companies to put the listings up there. And there has been sort of a challenge with rental listings, that there is no one site that really contains all the MLS listings, as well as, which there are about 100,000 for the record, as well as these large entities that own the majority of sort of multifamily listings. So I do think the problem is then that the consumer thinks that they're seeing all the listings, and they're not, and so that's a problem. So Dan, I want to pass to you and talk about, you brought up a term the other day that I really liked and I'm going to grab a hold of. So I want you to talk about it a little bit, which is the democratization of data.
Yeah, well, I'm mostly thinking about democratization of access, right? Back in the book days, the MLS, our value was that we gatekept that data, right? You only had access to it if you were a licensed, subscriber, all of that stuff. And those days, thankfully, are over. It's actually a better world with that done. But what do you do as an MLS if the consumer doesn't care about the MLS? Consumer can go anywhere they want to go and find listings. They can go to their county websites and find tax record, all the stuff that we've been using to power our markets. Well, we're still crucial to it. As Marilyn said, we're still central to it. But how do you provide value and stay relevant and stay important in a world where all of that is just out there in the world being public?
Right. And then are you ultimately serving the consumer or the subscriber? And we'll get into the subscriber in a minute, but that becomes the question, right?
Right. And MLSs contemplate direct-to-consumer plays. We have one in the works. And it's all about obviously keeping the consumer experience focused on the agent. But it is our platform we're standing up in partnership with some other MLSs. And all of the other things we're building some cool things, by the way.
I think you're referring to Nestfully anyway, by the way, right?
I was. Nestfully is
okay.
That, yeah.
Just thought I.
yeah. But then we've got both the consumer and the agent in our focus at all times as we build out the stuff that we're, even the new agent dashboard thing we call RE Center Hub it's always aimed at how the agent can get to work with the consumer faster. So we're all aimed at a better consumer experience.
That's true for One Home and Collab as
Yeah.
well, right? So
yeah, all of those. Yeah.
well, and I think it's funny. I will tell you this topic came up sort of Marilyn, I think you and I were chatting, and I have been talking to a lot of MLSs recently, and I do think we try and take the perspective here at Local Logic that if you're serving the consumer, you are serving the agent, who is in turn serving the broker, who is in turn serving the MLS, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tangled web we weave. And I do think, like, ultimately today's experience is that the consumer is, obviously, we know 99.9% are online first, something like 60%, right, go drive by the house, right? So by the time they get to an agent, they do think that they're educated, right? They're being bombarded with a lot of information.
Yeah.
And so this is really about how does if the MLS is serving the consumer, right, with the information they're providing, then they really are in turn creating the agent again as the local expert, which goes back to my great Chewbacca, thing, which is that if you have to have information that is not readily available to the consumer or helps them understand the information that is. So I don't know if anybody kind of wants to talk about that, but Marilyn, I know you talked a little bit too about it being a trading platform, and that in and of itself is in effect proprietary, really.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about, and if you can talk to any agent, they'll tell you they get 7,000 emails a day with people promising them greatness. If you only join my network, if you only sign up for my program, right? And the truth is, if you talk to most agents, they'll tell you the trading network of an MLS with the most qualified, the most experienced, the most knowledgeable local experts is the best place to sell a property, bar none, right? That's where the connections to qualified buyers comes from. That's if you are a buyer and you're looking for great properties for sale, it comes from the MLS. We really are the center, and it really is a trading platform when you think about it. But I also think that MLSs have a ton of potential to not only think about the types of data that's been curated, and rentals is a good example that you mentioned, Tom, right? We could do a lot better job with rentals than we have. And there's some progress being made with some third-party, services, but the core offering is still not where it needs to be. And why can't we build relationships with people that have high rises and make them somehow part of the MLS family? We should be able to do that. But also with the birth of so many APIs and the simplicity of integrating data, now we can become richer and richer and richer and even more customized in terms of, and we use an example on our prep call, like there was a brokerage in Silicon Valley that wanted to help their customers understand the microclimates on their properties. Because if you want to grow wine or avocados or artichokes or all the great things you can grow in California, they grow different places on your property differently, right? So they wanted to share that information. So they worked with the MLS to integrate that, and then they uniquely displayed that on their website. So we could integrate data that could be used by all brokers if they wanted to, by one individual broker or a collection of them. But if we think of ourselves as the ever-expanding repository of all things real estate, all types of data related to real estate, we can become even more important and become that technology partner that every brokerage and frankly, technology companies need as well.
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about a stock market analogy, and then I'll pass it to you, Tom, which is that if you're going to trade stocks, you're going to do it through the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. 99, if you really want to sell some more than one share of one stock, that's where you're going to do it because it's compliant, you're protected, right? I mean, and really the MLS is very akin to that. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Well, I think I'm going to say what you're saying maybe in a different way, but as the source of truth, we help the agent when they enter the listing to gather the relevant information for that listing. And I know this is true for all listing management systems. We apply the business rules to make sure that the listing is compliant. And then what Marilyn was just talking about was data augmentation. So there's the information about the property, and then there's augmented data that we can supply to that listing as well. And I think that's a crucial role of the MLS.
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing the same kind of thing, really building a best of breed property centric data set that aggregates data across a bunch of vendors. Marilyn's or Audrey's one of them. And there are a bunch of others, all aimed at what is the most valuable offering we can deliver once we have all that intelligence about a property. And I think there are MLSs that are I'll just say this: if an MLS isn't doing that, somebody's going to do that in your market.
Oh, right. We talked about, yeah.
And then they'll have the opportunities that you could have had.
Yeah.
Well, and then the final piece of this is being able to reflect back all of that property information to the agent to make them the center of the transaction. And, as we've been saying, the local area expert. Real estate is local, local, local.
Yep.
Well, and back to the idea of enabling different types of data. I recently did 8 focus groups with consumers about what they use on portals and what they like and what they don't. And the only word I would describe is ravenous. We think that we've given them a fair amount of data. We've given them not 1/10 of what they're looking for. Everything from, I want to know how far away a home is from a power line because I'm concerned about the radiation, to, there's a whole spectrum of things. I want to be able to put my furniture, take pictures of my furniture and plunk them in the floor plan that, oh, by the way, has measurements on it. Many MLSs don't do that right now. So I can see how it would really look if it was my property. They would give us
connectivity, Wi-Fi connectivity, big one.
Yeah, Wi-Fi. There's so many things that they're looking for. And they're also looking for personalized opportunities. That's a whole other conversation about what can we do to help an agent provide a real personalized solution to them. And the more data we have, if we know that they're all about that telephone pole or how far the power line is, we could provide them with specific reports that lean in on not only, of course, the house criteria, but also things like that. So agents can get smarter and smarter and more personalized, and can really, one of the things that consumers gig us for is we don't listen. Well, the reason we don't listen is because there's 6 houses for sale and there's 6,000 people that want them, right?
Yeah,
but the truth is, if we could provide them with custom searches that had not only the depth that we already provide them with things that are very specific for them, we look like we're a lot smarter than and much more attentive and responsive to their needs.
All right, so I'm going to throw 2 things I want to. First of all, I do like to always say that this masterclass is not an infomercial for Local Logic. We really try. I think we're doing well with the attendance because this is not just a sales bug. I will say that Local Logic, on that note, is actually coming out with location assessment reports that are actually exactly designed, Marilyn, to meet your need, that I've talked to both Dan and Tom and Marilyn about. And anybody who wants some interest in that, please find me. So that's the extent of my plug. Can I throw the group I did not put this in the prep, but I feel like you guys can handle it. Again, I may never see any of you again on my panel, but I feel like it's the elephant in the room and we're skirting around it, which is, and I'm going to throw it to Tom because I think he's going to be the most comfortable on it, is public portal, right, for the MLS. I feel like we're if we don't really at least say something about it really quick before we move to what we do for our subscribers, I feel like, how do you address that in your market? Because you are serving the consumer, but I am actually a big supporter. I'll go ahead and say it. I'm a huge supporter of consumer-facing portals for MLSs. I think I understand the arguments against, but I personally think it benefits the subscriber, the members, and the consumer together. And I think it's a great thing to do, but I know it can be a bit contentious. So Tom, any comments on that one?
Well, just clarifying question. When you say public portal, are you talking about just a consumer-facing portal, or
I'm talking about the MLS consumer-facing portal, a la MLS listings, or
So we feel very strongly about maintaining that consumer facing presence, and we feel like it helps us internally. Because we're able to see, and the agents are able to immediately see their listing once it goes live. We also use it as a way to showcase different kinds of listings. So I mentioned rentals earlier, open houses, things like that. not to pick on other portals, but one of the things that other portals do is that they don't always showcase all of the media that an agent has put together to market a listing. Some of the other portals will pick and choose what virtual tours they show, what sorts of other media they promote within that listing, and we want to make sure that everything that an agent has done to market their listing is available on that portal. The other thing that we see as
point. That's an excellent point, really.
The other thing is we try to connect consumers and agents directly. So we do provide leads not only to MLS listings agents, by the way, but also to other agents in other MLSs with whom we data share. So I know CRMLS agents are getting leads directly from MLSlistings.com. And we hook them up directly. We don't send that inquiry to a premier agent that's paid for that promotion. So we see it as a benefit to the agents, as a benefit to the consumers, and as a tool for us to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to promote the listing.
Appreciate that. Marilyn, you want to go? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a program we call the Customer Experience Index, which is surveys that we do consistently across the country in many MLSs. And one of the questions that we've asked, in addition to the work we do with brokers, is how do brokers feel about consumer-facing websites? Because there were times when it was sort of perceived as the devil, right?
100%.
I can tell you that almost, I want to say on average, don't quote me the exact number, but close to 3/4 of the people that we've polled, both agents and brokers, are in support of the MLS leaning in on generating, in effect, free leads for them and listing exposure through those portals. So while there were people, and there are still people, it's not like everybody's convinced. Nope. Generally speaking, given, and I think that the turning point was when so many of the portals turned to referral models, where they're taking anywhere from 25 to 40% of the
right.
not just doing advertising anymore.
Right.
They're taking the core money out of agents' pockets and brokers' pockets. Yeah. That brokers were like, what was that thing again? How could you help me, MLS? What's the point where you don't take any of my commission? I'm all about it. So I think that flip in the business model has driven more interest in it. And of course, consumers love it for all the reasons that Tom just talked about. They're great sources. Most are updated anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes. So the data is completely fresh. It's compliant, it's clean. And then it's overlaid with all kinds of other great, types of media. There's still opportunities, by the way, talking to consumers, for those that don't have this yet, the number one thing consumers want are floor plans. So if you don't have floor plans on your consumer facing websites, definitely get those. And again, with measurements. I know that's a big taboo with lots of brokers not wanting their agents to do that, but those are the two things consumers really want.
Okay, sites. That was good. I like that. Dan, I know you have a comment here.
Yeah, just to hop on what both of these guys already said a little bit. We have vendors come to us all the time with really cool stuff that we are looking to embed on our public facing portal to differentiate it, to and the beauty is we can experiment with stuff because it's ours. We don't have to wait for Zillow to get around to getting it on their roadmap, right? We have photo generation from StyleDot that is unbelievable, really head and shoulders above anything else you've seen. And we're talking about how to make it so that images are automatically restyled in your style preferences and colors as on the fly as you go, right? That's going to be hot for consumers, and we have in our own portal the nimbleness to play with things like that.
Well, I think that sums it up perfectly, and we'll go over to subscribers, but it's really, and I did, as God is my witness, I did not ask this in the prep call, so this was completely, I do love my my curveballs, but I do think that it's great to say that the MLS is in a position to innovate faster and quicker than depending on portals. Also, you guys have some advertising dollars, so then there's that in a much more localized way. Okay, so let's move to being subscriber focused and talk about not just how we're serving the consumer, but some of the tools that you guys, and I think Dan, you really just started it, right? You kind of took us in perfectly. And maybe if you want to talk about some of the things that CRMLS is doing, I know not as a plug, but per se, but but you guys are innovating pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you do have a lot going on,
Yeah.
as MLSs go right now.
Yeah.
So some of the things that you're looking at to serve your subscriber, outside of necessarily how it serves the consumer, maybe, or in conjunction.
Yeah, absolutely. We really feel like the data that we offer to subscribers has to extend way beyond listings. It has to extend even beyond things we can aggregate from other sources, including there's a thing called exhaust data, right, which is data that's captured as people are using systems. We have a whole mechanism for consuming that, and then we're going to be taking on a project to convert that into some predictive
Nice.
outputs and various things like that. We'll be able to understand for the first time, so if there's anything we're a source of truth of, it's the supply side of the industry. We are that, right? But we don't have great telemetry on the demand side. And so being able to understand offers were made, offers were countered, transactions happened, having all of that telemetry coming to us is going to enable a whole kind of unprecedented sort of broker analytics.
You know what was I was thinking of, Minter, for a second? I was thinking good luck getting that from Zillow. No, I mean, if your MLS is giving you predictive demand data, do you think you're going to get that anywhere else? I think not.
Right.
Sorry, I'm just going to say it.
Zillow doesn't have the contractual chops to do it, right? The MLS is the only one in the position, because we're the ones who license the data. We're the only ones who can do that. When I was the product manager.
Yeah, not to pick on Zillow, not to pick on Zillow too.
Listen.
Any of the mortgage portals, like, some of the large ones are all doing this, and then they're outbounding and calling.
I wanted to do it when I was the product manager in Trestle, and we just didn't have the contractual standing to require that from our customers, right? But the MLS does, and so we are.
Right.
And then we really feel like brokers cooperating with all the market data makes them all better, makes us all better, right? There's this phenomenon that happens in markets called knowledge asymmetry, where one person knows a whole lot about market conditions or other things, and they're competing with or negotiating with somebody who knows much less. And in markets with high knowledge asymmetry, outcomes are generally very much worse. Few people make out, but overall experience for consumers is much lower. And so we really are out to have our data offerings be a leveler of the playing field that brings everyone up. So that's how we're approaching the things we're offering out to the broker community in terms of data product.
Yeah, I think the exhaust one in particular is super interesting. And the predictive, I will tell you, as working for a local intelligence company, we are also heavily focused on predictive analytics. Sure. So I get it. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Yeah, so the tagline for Greater Southern MLS is the MLS focused on your success. And really the word MLS is really not even the priority anymore. It's really talking about the fact that what MLSs deliver, and many, I think we have 17, 18, I don't know, and everybody's got a lot of them these days. I think the average that we've seen is at least 10, right? So everybody's doing a lot more than MLS systems. What we're doing is positioning it as a marketing organization. In effect, we're a marketing partner, right? On a big trading platform that allows you to expose everything else. But one of the things I think we can all do better as MLSs is better telling the story in the context of how agents will hear us. So sometimes we say, well, then there's this feature and it does this and it does this and it does this. And it's all like we talk tech, we talk data. The word data, we all love it because we're a bunch of data geeks on this call. And I know many of you watching are too. Agents don't say that word 400 times a day like we do. It's not a word for them, right? But what we can do a better job of is helping them understand in tactical ways. Look at the whole sales funnel. What do we do for listing generation? What do we do for listing exposure? What do we do for lead gen? What do we do to help you get a listing presentation? What do we do to help you close a listing presentation? What do we do to help you create a more seamless process, less stress-free? How do you make sure your offers are managed properly? You just go down the whole list of all the things. And then, of course, how do you keep them with you so that you get more than a 13% repeat business rate that NAR quotes, right? You can go to all the new home ownership management platforms that are out there to keep people with you and support them while they own the home. So when they're ready, they come back around again, right? So we provide support. Most MLSs provide support for every single part of the sales process, but we don't necessarily speak it in those terms. We speak more tech as opposed to, you have this sales problem in your sales process. Here's how we can help you. And oh, by the way, would you like a 3-minute video to learn about that? That's another thing we're learning a lot is the shorter, the sweeter, the better. They're not looking for 2-hour training sessions. They're looking for, that's a cool feature to help me do that particular thing in the sales process, get me in, get me out, and let me go on my way.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I have to say, when RAE of Edmonton launched our product about a year ago, they did this amazing video of introducing it to their membership. And they were, I think, one of the first MLSs that signed up with us way back when. And we asked them, could we cut it and snip it and use it and promote it, because the guy was not just a trainer, but a regular trainer for an MLS, did such a killer job of showing how utilitarian and local logic is to their membership. And we fell in love with it and promoted the hell out of it. Tom, I'll pass to you, because candidly, you are a great client, like CRMLS, of Local Logic, both on the front end and the back end. And I think we do want to talk about not just property data, but also other kinds of data, whether it's Local Logic or anything else. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, yes. I also did want to speak back to
Sure, go for it.
both things that Marilyn and Dan had mentioned. Marilyn was mentioning consumers want floor plans, and Dan was talking about knowledge asymmetry. Great phrase. And it made me think, one of the hard-learned lessons for me personally was to not put our consumer-facing portal ahead of our subscribers. So one of the things that we learned many years ago was, if we're providing information to the consumers, we better make darn sure that the agents have it first, and 100%. That they're armed with it. And in fact, we kind of want to promote that knowledge asymmetry between the agent and the consumer, because we want them to be the expert.
So when I was building out the program here, the MLS program here, the first thing I did was get integrated with like Black Knight and CoreLogic and FBS first, because I knew that to my core. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Well, and so we are a relatively new Local Logic customer, but you won't find it on MLSlistings.com. But we are first going to be providing it to our agents, and once our agents are familiar with it, then we'll go ahead and put it onto our .com site. So I think that's just a really important piece of it. Again, in terms of, as Marilyn said, being focused on the agent and their success.
Well, you serve the agent, you serve the consumer, you serve the consumer, you serve the agent, right? I mean, it just, and so what other kinds, again, in addition to Local Logic, I don't know, Dan, if you want to talk about a little bit, other kinds of data. Obviously, we're the data outside the four walls, right? And have found, certainly, I will say, candidly, we signed literally another MLS yesterday. We're signing quite a large number now, because the data outside the four walls, we live where we work and we work where we live. But what else, in addition, again, in my promise of not doing an infomercial, what other kinds of things are you guys providing in addition to Local Logic that you find utilitarian along that front? And then we'll open some questions to the group, to actually our audience.
I think the rise of photo tagging, right? And the rise of leveraging AI to be able to help the agent describe that property better and present it better. That's been huge for us.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're also bringing in green building registry data, which is I think a really, really interesting and important data set. One of the ones we have to be careful with, and I learned a big thing here, is climate data. Turns out in California in particular, there are some mandated sources of that if you go to somebody else and it disagrees with that, you can get into liability issues. So we've had to back down on some of those things. We're still shopping. There was some news out of Black Knight that they had some new stuff in the data candy store, and so I have a quote coming from Troy Reck any minute here. That's
nice. If Troy's on this call, he's very, very happy.
I've been waiting a week or two, so Troy, come on.
I will tell you,
Anyway,
climate is not as contentious as you portray. Forgive me, Dan, in Canada. It's actually already out there, and has been much more sort of, I would say, embraced. And in fact, there's regulation, nationwide regulation about mandating the use of climate data, like in appraisals. So you can
yeah,
actually find climate data on like Rural Page and a number of sites.
yeah,
And climate data is pretty prolific on the mortgage, like Fannie Mae uses it, Freddie Mac. So just, but I understand we always have to think of whatever data we have out there. Is it like, to your point, regulated data, sanctioned data, right?
yeah. Yeah, well, in fact,
Fair
in
housing, blah, blah, blah. Like, so
right,
in all of our
right,
reports, like I know we're going to be launching hopefully our neighborhood reports with you guys, right? That all of that data is clean, so to speak.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the issue in California is that there's state law mandating certain
Yeah,
sources for both
interesting. Okay.
fire risk and flood.
You gotta
So,
love California, Dan, though. It's the left coast.
yeah,
Marilyn, do
yeah.
you have anything more on this or before we go to questions?
Well, the floodplain definitely is one that's very popular. We've also just seen one recently that integrates sources of internet and cable and things like that at the listing level, because when you move, sometimes that's a real pain to find. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
another.
Yeah, like my move.
It's coming from so many places now that it's really exciting. And again, with the depth of what Riso's done and then so much work on
Yeah,
API, it's a lot easier to integrate from a variety of sources these days than we ever were able to do before. So
that's really true. Dan, I think you had one more. So
I have one more kind of other sort of topic, which is if anybody in the data chain of custody is going to stand up for the broker's rights to the value of that data, it's going to have to be the MLS. Nobody else has that as a concern. Right. And MLSs have not traditionally done super great at that, but it's aimed at that we stood up our product RE Distribute, which is unlocking a very valuable source of demand for listing data, institutional consumers. And it's now a collaboration of many MLSs. We actually have more than half of the MLS traffic in the country committed to joining. It's not onboarded that much yet, but people who are in on it. And the deal is we're literally taking that revenue and returning it home to the broker where the data started. And that's pretty transformational in terms of really telling the rest of the story about data value, who really owns it, where it comes from, where it lands, it gets used, where it gets monetized. So that's the kind of thing that really only an MLS is going to.
that topic terrifies me. So I am going to leave it as because I feel like who owns the data is a whole nother webinar. Marilyn, you're going to say something on this, are you? Go ahead. Do you want to, or do you want to leave it where it sits?
I'm very compliant, Ginger. I won't say anything.
Okay, good, please. Do want to open it to. I'm sorry, I told you that, man. I do want to open it up to some questions for the group. For we do have a fair number of people joining us, and we did talk about some of a few questions that we would open it up to our audience. And I do have some comments in already, but what would you like to see your MLS provide in terms of data and services to our audience? There is also, what is the value of the MLS given the current situation of lawsuits? I think while we wait for people to answer the first one, I feel like Dan maybe kind of walked us into that one a little bit. And what is the value of the MLS in a down market versus an up market? So I think those, we only have a few, 10 more minutes, but I thought we would talk about at least the second two, which is what is the value of the MLS given the current situation of lawsuits? I guess you guys can choose which one you want to answer or both. What is the value of MLS in a down market versus an up market? So Tom, do you want to jump on, or is anybody ready? Want to go first?
Well, the lawsuit you're talking about, moral, right? And the seller paying buyers compensation. I mean, you still need the listing to be syndicated. You, as a seller, you still need to get it out there. I see the MLS as being removed from that particular of who pays the buyer's agent. That I don't know that the MLS plays it in that, other than today we have a commission field, but yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
fair. Any
we're still,
other perspectives on that? I think
Yeah, Dan, you want to go? I'll go after you.
Sure. I think that the fact of the MLS's centrality in a market being a consequence of NAR rules is, I think it's about time that ends. I think that has resulted in a lot of organizations. I heard somebody say, "Hey, we got the rule book and the licensing rights. What else? What else could you ever want?" And I just really think it's time for MLSs to start thinking hard about the value they're providing as service providers, software providers. I was brought into CRMLS as part of the answer to this question, right? How do we build out an engineering program, a product program that can deliver value way beyond you have to put it in here because NAR says. I think that's the future of MLS.
Okay, cool.
I agree. Earning your way. This is a whole, we could do a whole other I think you actually have done a whole webinar on this topic, but just for what it's
the lawsuits, it's true, it's the last one.
The whole concept of buyer's agency, I think frankly we all have to work together on that, whether it starts at the state level, and CMLS did a whole webinar on this too, which was great if you didn't see it. But MLSs have so many technologies that can support buyer's agency, and I think ultimately we can help be part of the solution with brokers to elevate the stature of buyer's agents, right? So the lawsuits, depending on how they turn out, I mean, fingers crossed that Anywhere is the first of all of the settlements, and let's hope they all settle. If they don't, we have a much bigger conversation to have about what all of us are doing and whether any of us have jobs. But I do think we have a major role in, to your point, Dan, opening it up, like let this truly be a trading platform that's more flexible, that is really designed to help the needs of the practitioner as well as the consumer in that marketplace. But we have so many technologies that can help consumers understand the value that buyer's agents play, and we can tangibly help them deliver value and service with that. So I do think we have a value in that. And for what it's worth, Greater Southern unrequired the commission field, not unlike Northwest did. We did it almost 2 years ago, to absolutely no problem whatsoever. So if any of you are thinking about that and you're worried about it, I can tell you that business goes on just as you would always expect it to. And all that time, we've had 3 people in the field, which can now be alphanumeric, say, call me and we'll negotiate. That's as bad as it gotten. And I don't think that's a bad thing, frankly. If someone wants to negotiate, let them negotiate it. It supports our cause of that there's nothing, fixed here that people are trying to say that we're, whatever we're doing. We're not doing that. So for what it's worth, if anybody's interested and you want to learn more about how we did it, happy to talk to you about that.
Cool. That's good. We did get a question in on how can mortgage brokers leverage MLS data? So I know nobody's prepared for that, but if they want to talk about that for a minute. And I will say this does go into a little bit of the desire by and I knew this obviously from ListHub, but the desire for the financial side of the industry and the commercial side of the industry increasingly to leverage MLS data. And there are companies out there that are really trying to take this data and make it more available, especially when we're a little on a downward slope coming back up. But when we were at the height of the height, everybody and their brother wanted MLS data. So any thoughts on that? If not, that's okay. I'll go back to a different question, which is and this is we'll maybe keep this as our last one. What is the value of an MLS in a down market versus an up market? And is there sort of a difference, or really the value is the same? Because in effect, and this is what I've sort of explained in doing sort of classes on the industry a little bit to folks, is that if the house has 10 buyers because the market is hot, or the house has 9 buyers because the market doesn't have enough inventory, so it's technically slow, but it's not really slow because Mary and Joe have to actually move, right? So they still have the same 9 buyers because there's just not any inventory. Doesn't the MLS serve the same purpose, and isn't that just equally important?
Yeah, I mean, to me, you guys can all jump in, but when it's a hot market, it gives the people that are anxious to buy a place to go get it, because we've curated that. In a slow market, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is we can provide local, state, and national listing exposure and lead gen opportunities through a variety of tools that we provide. and at a very low price. So if the market's tight on either side and people don't have enough to buy or enough to sell, we're doing it at a price, and I'm not going to quote prices. I've been trained with antitrust, but we all know MLS prices relative to all the other ways you can expose listings are very,
Yeah.
very affordable.
That's very true, actually.
And-
And not to mention the additional
and by the way-
services you get, you know?
Exactly. So we provide great exposure when you need more exposure, and we provide quick exposure when you need that, when people are hot, and got to get in.
Yeah, I think that's good. Dan, do you have a?
Yeah.
I heard a great take on this that was, it's not a down market, it's a skills market. And it's going to shake out a bunch of the people who just picked up licenses because they're cheap and easy and seemed like free money. Those folks will shake out, and who'll be left will be the people with the skills to operate. And if it's a skills market, that also means it's a tools market.
Yeah.
And that's where the MLS comes in.
Yeah,
have-
I was going to sort of say the exact same thing, that, you know, we offer a different set of tools in this kind of a market. So, you know, we're offering lots of market data reports that, you know, again, help provide agents with talking points to their buyers, right? And you know, help with getting sellers on board. So
That is
it's a different tool set. Yeah,
and that's really the direction that we've been going with the new neighborhood report, which is to give people what's not out there in the public portals, and it should be, you know, that it will come from the MLS first, which is, you know, hey, what is it like to live here? You know, what does that mean to me? Tell me the story of it. I don't want a 75-page, you know, series of graphs, you know, that I don't understand and don't really explain anything to me about what it's like to live in that neighborhood that frankly could be 15 minutes from me. We have one last question that I think perfectly sums up the session. So this is last one. For someone who is just starting out in real estate and new to MLS, what are the best tools to learn and master for all the MLS has to offer? Of course, aside from local logic, which would you guys say?
well, I mean, you have to be able to master the search functionality, right?
Okay.
You've got to be able to parse it exactly the right way for your buyers, and also to be able to use that search tool for prospecting.
Okay.
I mean, I would spend all my time learning whatever it is, Paragon, Matrix, you know, what have you.
Yeah. Prospecting.
That's a good answer.
I see a lot of people not taking full advantage of targeted search and prospecting. I think you're exactly right about that, Tom. And, you know, a great move is to think of a market that's likely to want to move at some point soon. The example I heard about this was empty nesters. All right, so fine. How are you going to search the public record for empty nesters? All right, come up with how you're going to do that. Find a territory you're going to walk. Come up with a pitch that's going to work for those folks. And it's like a way in that's driven by the data and focused in a way that has you not burning a bunch of shoe leather to make contacts. I
do think that's where like we're doing a lot more with demographics, and I do think like that's where that data is really coming of age. Because as I resemble that remark of empty nester, and I am looking for fellow empty nesters. So there's no question about it. If you're raising a family, you probably like to be around other families. If you're, you know, Marilyn, you want the last word on the webinar before we go?
What I would say is, you know, the MLSs that we work with and many that are on the call have great training. And if you can dedicate an hour a week of your time and just go to the dashboards and I always say that just push a button, just try one of them. Or importantly, just take advantage of the training that's already there. I guarantee you're going to learn a lot more about how to take advantage of that, again, very affordable subscription if you just take advantage of what's already there for you.
I think it's a perfect summary, which is really, you know, we can talk about a lot of things, but take the time to learn. Don't make assumptions that MLSs are innovating. They do understand that they need to be the source of truth. They want to be the source of truth. They want to give you tools. They want to earn their VIG. Everybody gets it. And if you don't see something in your MLS that you'd like to see, you know, call them and tell them. I mean, there's nothing more
Please
powerful
do.
than I can tell you, as somebody who has spent several jobs serving MLSs, the members are the loudest and speak and carry the biggest stick. So thank you all for joining us. Totally appreciate it. I think that's more or less it. And we will be sending out a recording of this, so we will make this available. But please find any of the panelists or myself if you ever have any additional questions. And thank you for joining this month's masterclass with Ginger. By the way, that could be any one of us, I feel like. All right. Thank you very much. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Everybody.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.